item on the agenda is the, well, I think you've had a welcome, report. Apologies for absence. So far, 2 Jims.
Well, yeah, I've got apologies from Councillor Convery as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any declarations of interest? Take silence as assent. Can we now move on to the Chair's report? Which is, first of all, as you know, the clerk has been consulting on a proposal to reschedule the meeting of the committee that is due to take place on the 19th of November, with a view to that annual accounts and all the other items are scheduled to be considered that month being discussed at a single meeting. Hopefully there will be a council meeting after the conclusion of our meeting. The date is suitable for the majority of the committee, so I propose that we formally agree the accounts and will be formally submitted to the council. And after that, the arrangements for the meeting will be confirmed in due course. Secondly, as you may be aware, Audit Scotland has recently published a useful COVID-19 guide to audit and risk committees. It refers to the crucial role that committees like ours play in providing effective scrutiny and challenge, and how this has become even more important due to the current pandemic. More specifically, the guide has been prepared to assist us focus on short-term challenges faced in the response phase of the pandemic. It poses a series of questions designed to assist us effectively scrutinise key areas that require additional focus on internal control and assurance, financial management and reporting, governance and risk management. Seeking answers to the question will help us better understand how the Council is responding to the pandemic and managing both the immediate and longer term challenges it is creating. I've asked for a report on the issues raised to be submitted to our next meeting. Can I also introduce the officers attending today? As we move on to consider the rest of the agenda, in addition to Margaret McCrossan, Linda Hutchison and Michelle Blair, we have the following officers here to present various reports: Sharon Dick and Kath McCormick and Alison Ballingal, Joe Derbyshire, and from External Audit, Pauline Gillen and Maureen Fraser, along with Jennifer Graham. Can I welcome you all along here, as I do the committee members as well. Can I move on to the Managing Absence Annual Report? It's item 4 on the agenda. Sharon, is that you to speak to this one?
Kath McCormick's going to speak to this
Kath,
one.
okay, right, thanks, Kath.
Okay, thank you. So I'll provide you with the summary of the report. So the purpose of the report was to update the Audit and Scrutiny Committee on the Council's sickness absence levels and its approach to managing absence. The Council's overall absence levels remains unchanged from the previous year. In 2019-20, the Council's overall absence was 10.1 days per full-time equivalent employee. There was an increase in absence for local government employees, with 12.97 days lost per full-time equivalent. Teacher absence, however, has reduced by 0.94 days to 5.16 days per full-time equivalent teacher. The reason for sickness absence remains similar to previous years, with stress, non-work related, musculoskeletal, gastro disorders and flu being the high-ranking reasons. In the report, we've benchmarked the Council's approaches to managing absence to those recommended by the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, and the Council has implemented many of the suggested approaches, including referring staff to occupational health, holding return to work meetings with staff, and supporting line managers to take more responsibility for managing absence. At present, the local government benchmarking data isn't yet available for 1920, so we were unable to state whereabouts we are in terms of the rankings against other councils. That's my summary. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. The only question I have is, when the report becomes available, the benchmarking report for the current year, can be made available to the committee members, please?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Not really a question. I'm just wondering, when we get the next report, how much the COVID-19 business will have affected the stress level that we might see of our employees having to deal with not being in the office or not doing what they would like to be doing, I think that that's going to be a report that will be a bit mind-bending.
Yeah, and certainly we have been quite mindful of stress related to COVID matters, and we are looking at how we could perhaps record that, and what we can do is take as an action to put that in the end of year report this year or next year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else with a question? No, silence is said. The only thing, other thing I'd say is I think we all have to accept that the year of 2021 is going to be very, very different to what it is there. If we can move on to the next one, the summary of early retirement redundancy costs. Sharon, is that you this time?
No, that's me again. Okay, so
I keep trying to get Sharon to do something.
Oh, Sharon's got the next one. So I'll give you the overview of the redundancy figures. So the report is based on the 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. So redundancies continue to be assessed using a process based on financial business case. Where the organisation chooses to grant an early retirement or voluntary redundancy, the financial business case for the restructure needs to show that the cost can be recovered within acceptable timeframes, with ongoing tangible savings being achieved thereafter. The exception to this is where we have employees on temporary contracts with over 2 years continuous service or service carried over from another public sector organisation. The local government pension scheme permits the Pension Administration Authority to charge employing authorities for costs incurred by early repayment of pension benefits to employees who retire early in various circumstances. These sums are known as strain on the fund costs. The strain of the fund costs for the period of April 2019 to March 2020 was £609,926. A breakdown of the full redundancy and early retirement figures are contained in Appendix A. I'll just give you a very brief summary. There were 92 instances of early retirement or redundancy during the period of April to March, which were due to departmental restructurings, change projects and end of temporary employment contracts. The cost of processing early retirements and redundancies was circa 1.7 million, resulting in a net annual saving of around 1.5 million. From these figures, the initial outlay to process the early retirements and redundancies will be recovered in 1.2 years, with savings in excess of 1.5 million thereafter, per annum thereafter. Do you have any questions?
I would hope not, but
No.
anything?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Just we have to be very careful with that one too. We can't identify anybody.
Yeah.
Annette.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a wee bit of clarity. You mentioned that there was a percentage that were carried out with no business case applied. Is there any information on how many that was? I mean, the 1.2 years recovery is very good, and the figures speak for themselves, but it was just when you mentioned that there was some that there was no business case. Is there a number for that or any details?
Yeah, I can provide that separately, because those will be the employees who have fixed term contracts, as I say, because once you reach 2 years, employees are actually entitled to a statutory or a redundancy payment. So I can provide those figures separately.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions?
No.
Annette, you've still got your hand up. Thank you. Okay, if no further questions, then we shall move on to number 6, the National External Audit Report. I'm saying nothing.
It is me that's speaking this time, Councillor.
Right, thanks, Sharon.
Right, thank you very much. The report, the Accounts Commission report, Equal Pay and Council's Impact Report, covered 5 main themes that concerned the implementation of Single Status Agreement equal pay claims and how these were settled and the ongoing risk and governance for the council, or all councils. The Single Status Agreement consists of 2 separate aspects: a new pay and grading model that was introduced and proposals in terms and conditions of service. In 2007, East Hampshire Council was the 3rd council to reach collective agreement on this, and we did introduce our scheme, which was effective from the 1st of July 2006. We did begin to receive equal pay claims from 2005. And these claims were a mixture of what were classed as first wave claims, residual claims and second wave claims. The Council did settle the majority of its first wave claims in 2006. However, provision was made between 2006 and December 2014 to continue that process, because some of the claims did take a while to settle due to legal advice that was given at that time. So we settled all our, there was 1,236 first wave claims, which totaled more than 7.6 million, and they were all settled by, as I say, December 14. We had made a decision as a council to settle our first wave claims before we moved on to second wave claims. There was 429 claims, second wave claims, that were settled at a cost of 477k. And they were, again, all claims were settled on the provision of a compensation basis. All our claims were resolved by March 2017. In the previous report that the Accounts Commission published in September 2017, there was 6 outstanding cases, and that was just that they'd taken their data from the February of that year, which was why they were still mentioned that report. So that kind of covers our equal pay claims, and we have got no outstanding claims. With the report also touched on the gender pay gap, and the gender pay gap is expressed as a percentage, and where this is positive, it indicates that women are paid less than men. And in Scotland, the medium or midpoint pay gap it's fell from 16.1% to 14.3% in 2019. In East Renfrewshire, the gender pay gap over the last 3 years has fallen from 8.8% to 7.5%, and for 1920 is now sitting at 6.3%. In 2018-19, we were in the 4th quartile for that, but again, the figures haven't been released this year, so we're not sure where our position is for 1920. In the report, it referenced as well what can impact the gender pay gap, and it can be impacted by occupational segregation, full-time workers sometimes qualifying for extra payments, women being underrepresented in senior management levels, leadership roles, and women taking on the majority of care responsibilities, and it can also be caused by inflexible working practices. As a council, we are very supportive of equality, and we are taking a number of actions to address that. In our high female salary earners, we have 59.3% of our highest 5% employees are female, and we're in the top quartile for that. Although 75% of our employees are female, so there is still improvement could be made in that area. Occupational segregation is an area where we have a high number of female staff, and we have got a high volume of workers in these areas, and that covers posts typically like home care, catering, cleaning, PSAs, etc. We are taking a number of steps to address occupational segregation. We do provide flexibility on care. We've got a care provision for carers, parental leave, and we do promote our flexible working options. We are also looking to look at ways where we can help to give people in these roles career progression opportunities. And there's a couple of examples of them that are mentioned in the report. One in home care, where HSCP have been funding employees to go through their SBQ2 qualification, and as a result of that, they will gain an increased grade, which will help with the pay gap. And there also has been an example, which is detailed in the report, about early years, where we are following guidance from a Scottish Government linked organisation that works with ethnic minorities, and that's removed the need for formal qualifications and is allowing people to progress through working with college so that they can get the qualifications required for the job. Another area where we are currently working on is consolidation of the living wage, which will have a positive impact on the pay grade, and that there is a current proposal on the table with the trade unions for grades 1 to 6. Negotiations are still ongoing with that at present. So the report covers obviously the costs that we have incurred for settling our equal pay claims, and also the position that we're currently in and the steps that we are taking to try and address the gender pay gap. I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Councillor Miller, you're on mute.
Thank
No,
thank you. Thank you, ladies. I see Barbara's got her hand up, so I'll let her first question.
I'd just like to ask Sharon, does the Working Time Directive impact on what you're trying to establish?
No, the Working Time Directive wouldn't impact on this.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I'm delighted to hear that men are now going to be paid the same as women in our council, because just looking at the screen, there's Charlie and I seem to be well in the minority here. Okay, we shall now move on. That was maybe a bit flippant. Move on to item number 7, the National Fraud Initiative. And we have Alison here to speak on that one.
Thanks, Councillor Miller. The National Fraud Initiative in Scotland is a counter-fraud exercise which is led by Audit Scotland and overseen by the Cabinet Office for the UK as a whole. It uses computerised techniques to compare information about individuals held by different public bodies and on different financial systems that might suggest the existence of fraud or error. It means that public bodies can take action if any fraud or error has taken place, and it allows auditors to assess fraud prevention arrangements with those bodies, which those bodies have. In East Renfrewshire Council, we have a single point of contact for NFI, and that person sits within my revenues team. What they do is they coordinate the data returns and ensure that results are circulated to services for action. To make the most of NFI, we should be investigating data matches, identifying fraud and errors and stopping them, recovering any overpayments and improving systems as a result. The NFI exercise, that's National Fraud Initiative exercise, it runs every 2 years. In 2019, we reported on the outcome of the exercise, and the next review will start in 2021. This year, in 2020, Audit Scotland reported on the 2018-19 exercise in the report National Fraud Initiative 2018-19. That report came out in July 2020. This report recognises the outcomes delivered over the past 2 years in Scotland of 15.3 million and cumulative outcomes of 143.6 million since 2006-07. It also recognises that the COVID-19 pandemic brings significant challenges to the public sector with an increased risk of fraud and error. The report today gives a broad overview of the NFI process, its outcomes, and confirms that ERC have a robust and effective approach to NFI. And I'm happy to answer any questions or obtain further information.
Thank you, Alison. Do we have any questions? I don't see anything here.
Oh,
I'm sure. No, you don't, Barbara. Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Alison. I appreciate your time as well. We shall now move on to the next one, which is item number 8. Managing risk. It's Jill that comes to speak in this one. Good afternoon, Jill.
Good afternoon, Chair. This is Managing the Risk of Fraud and Corruption, the fraud response statement for 2019-20, and follows on from the work that Alison was just outlining there. In order to demonstrate compliance with the Code of Corporate Governance, this fraud response statement provides an overview of the measures in place across East Renfrewshire to address anti-fraud, bribery and theft, managing the risk of fraud and corruption, and to provide an update on actions undertaken during 2019-20 where appropriate. A range of measures are in place to address and prevent fraud, bribery and theft. These include a revised anti-fraud, bribery and theft strategy, new guidance on gifts and hospitality, training to identify and prevent money laundering, ongoing cybersecurity training for employees, the procurement team working closely with Scotland Excel and Police Scotland to minimise risks to the Council, specific controls in place across all processes to ensure risk of loss through fraud is minimised and segregation of responsibilities. The Council works closely with other services in relation to frauds, potential frauds, and receives alerts through the National Anti-Fraud Network. The Audit and Scrutiny Committee provides a scrutiny role in relation to the application of anti-fraud, bribery and theft. Investigations are normally undertaken by the internal audit team, and during 2019-20, a total of 5 potential fraud incidents were reported to the committee. East Renfrewshire Council has an effective approach to the National Fraud Initiative, as Alison has outlined earlier today. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the fraud risks facing organisations are higher than at other times. In relation to business grants administered by the Economic Development Team, the team have worked closely with both creditors and internal audit to take the appropriate steps to reduce the threat of fraud, and where there has been suspected fraud, the Economic Development Team are working closely with Police Scotland, and no payment has been made in relation to these applications. This work is currently ongoing, and it is likely that the Scottish Government will audit local authorities at some point on this work. It is recommended that the Audit and Scrutiny Committee note the content of the fraud response statement and the work being undertaken across the Council in relation to managing the risk of fraud and corruption and the reporting already in place. I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I don't see it anyways. Yeah, Barbara's indicating that she would
I just want to ask Jill, have you had any indication that police might be involved in anything in East Renfrewshire? Jill, I was asking.
My understanding that a few business grant applications had been identified as potentially fraudulent, and that Police Scotland are working with the Economic Development Team on this, but that no payments have been made where this is suspected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions? No. Okay, thanks, Jill. Hate to say it, but you're the next one on as well. Item number 9, Strategic Risk Register and Risk Management Progress. Jill, thank you.
Thank you very much. This report provides the latest biennial update of the Council's Strategic Risk Register. The previous update of the Strategic Risk Register was considered by the Audit and Scrutiny Committee on the 12th of March 2020. The Strategic Risk Register sets out the key strategic risks to be considered by East Renfrewshire Council and details the actions put in place to address these risks. A thorough review of all risks on the register has been undertaken by the Corporate Management Team. Appendix 1 of this report sets out the current Strategic Risk Register. In detail, the changes to this document since it was last reported are that 3 new risks have been added to the register, 1 risk has been removed, and 4 risk descriptors have been amended to reflect the current situation. The risk map shows the spread of risks, and the table below shows the risks set out by strategic outcome. There are currently 33 risks, of which 15 are evaluated as high and 18 medium. Given the current COVID-19 pandemic, the Strategic Risk Register is reviewed and updated frequently as appropriate to reflect the current live situation. The Audit and Scrutiny Committee is asked to consider and note the development of the Council's Strategic Risk Register, noting that it is considered a live document and will be updated and amended by the Corporate Management Team as appropriate. Happy to take comments or further information. Thank you.
Annette.
Thank you, Chair. It was a question on page 33, paragraph 11. It's the risk that has been removed, which was the potential successful judicial review into lawfulness of charging for instrumental music. Do you have any more information on what has changed that this has been removed from the risk register? I note that it's still on the Education Department risk register.
Yes, it has. It's been moved from the Strategic Risk Register, but is retained on the Education Department Risk Register. I understand there has been a change in the judicial review, but I will get back some more detailed information for you on that from the Education Department.
That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Margaret, you want to add anything?
Yes, I can maybe give a wee update on that one. I think this is a national pressure for a judicial review that came up some time ago about the music service all across the country, and I believe that that's been taken forward in other ways, and there appears nationally now to be a lower likelihood of that going to judicial review. So although the issue is still a live issue, it's not as high a risk, and therefore it's taken off the strategic register, and as Jill said, it's reflected only in the departmental one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Barbara.
Chairman, it's just that on page 33, one of the bullet points, changes to the Scottish Qualifications, certificate, etc., You see, we've got this down as a medium risk, but what I'm concerned about is how are we in a position to change that risk? I don't see that we are in a position to change some of these risks. I mean, they get reported to us and we have to note them, but I'm not sure some of these risks that we are in a position to actually do anything about.
Thanks, Barbara. I think the risk register really is not about how it's more how we manage the risk rather than anything else. Do you want to comment on that, Jill?
Or Chair, I can come in on that one as well.
If you want to come in, that's fine.
As I say, this is something that comes up through the corporate management team, and that risk is added on. If you go to the Appendix A, it's at the bottom of page 41, and you can see that although we can't do anything alone, we do contribute to consultation on the future format and arrangements for exams, and also through the Directors of Education networks working with both the Scottish Government and the SQA on the updated arrangements. So although we can't do anything on our own, we can bring pressure to bear nationally and working with our partners to try to influence the way that the exams are carried out in future.
Thanks, Margaret. Is that any help to you, Barbara?
Well, that's helpful. We'll see how progress develops.
Thank you. The only point I would make, and it's really only a point for noting, is the risk 2.3. You've got it down as quite a high risk. The house building, the amount of house building versus the attendances at schools. Basically, to me, that is up to us as to, and the chair of planning, to be honest, since she's here, I might as well bring her in, as to how many houses we build and how many places that our schools can accommodate. We have to balance the two. And as in life, it really is a balancing act. Any further questions? Okay, we'll move on. Thanks, Jill. Appreciate your help. Number 10, the local external audit. Sorry, who we got for this one? Pauline and Morven.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. The paper you have in front of you today is our management letter on the Council's systems of internal controls. In previous years, you would have been provided with a formal and more detailed report than this is, but given the delays in us completing our interim work due to our remote working and also the minor nature of the issues that we identified in our work, we thought it was appropriate to bring you the report in a letter format rather than a more formal report. So I hope that's okay for the committee. You'll see we covered the same things that we would normally cover. You'll see paragraph 4, a list of the systems that we covered as part of our testing. You'll recall that a new financial ledger was implemented during the year. So that required us to do some testing on the old ledger, which covered part year, and the new ledger, which covered from September onwards. We were able to rely on the work of internal audit because they had done some work on the new system. So we were able to rely on that work, which limited the amount of testing that we had to do. So you'll see in Appendix 1, the findings from our work. So this is the key findings and action plans, very much like you would see in our traditional controls report. So you see that we don't have that many issues that we identified. There's only 5 there. Most of them relate to, I think 3 of them relate to reconciliations. So that's reconciliations between various feeder systems or the payroll system and the Care First system to the ledger. So some of these can be put down to interim arrangements being in place subsequent to a new ledger system being implemented. So officers are still finding the right format and the right processes to follow for the formal recording of reconciliations. So we're content with the responses that management have provided, and we will follow up on that next year when we come to do our interim testing for 2021. The only one I would specifically draw your attention to is the very last one, which relates to payroll overpayments, and the committee will have seen this issue raised in previous years and in previous audit reports. So this is where employees have left the council, but the leaver form hasn't been completed and sent on to HR to take them off the payroll, or if it has been, it's been done late and it's resulted in previous employees receiving an overpayment. So you'll see there that there are management actions in place to try and address that. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Pauline. Anyone? Annette?
No. Thank you. It was just the final point on the payroll overpayments, and that there's work being done on that at the moment. It's under review. Will the Audit and Scrutiny Committee have an update, and when will that be? So in terms of our work, we are in the midst of doing our audit of the annual report and accounts, as you'll be aware. So that's ongoing just now. So as a result of this weakness in the system, we'll do some additional testing of our payroll audit. So what we'll specifically do is have a larger sample of leavers that we would traditionally test, and we'll just check the process that was followed from them leaving and make sure that they were taken off the payroll at the correct date to ensure that in the accounts there isn't a systemic issue of people receiving overpayments. So we'll cover it in that way in terms of the figures in the accounts. But then for next year, once those, obviously these new controls that are in place weren't in place for 1920. So when we come to do our 2021 audit, we'll go back and do the same controls testing and just ensure that the issue isn't arising for 2021. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Your hand's still up in it. Anyone else like to speak on that or say anything on it? Obviously, I take silence as assent as per usual. Now we move on to item number 11, the National External Audit Report and Self-Directed Support. I don't know who's reading. Linda, I see you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Miller and Councillor Gilbert are leading on this particular report on self-directed support. And that's because it was already in the process of being dealt with before it was agreed in August that Councillor Convery would be the one of the two members of the committee who would lead on HSCP issues going forward in terms of the committee's specialisation arrangements. The Chief Officer HSCP has provided comments on the report as prepared for the Integration Joint Board Performance and Audit Committee meeting that took place yesterday. Progress in self-directed support is referred to, but the report also reflects that further work is required to embed changes, further refine and analyse data and review and reflect on the use of self-directed support during the pandemic to inform future developments. As well as you being asked to consider the feedback provided in various issues, the report refers to a further update being provided to the IJB Performance and Audit Committee following local self-evaluation activity, and it is an option for you to ask for that also to be submitted to this committee if you wish to do so.
From a personal point of view, thank you, Linda, for that. From a personal point of view, I think it would be a good idea that if that we could get that further report forwarded to us when it was made available. Any questions in this one?
No.
Nothing at all?
No.
Right.
It's me again. This is the report on affordable housing. So Councillor Miller and Councillor Grant are leading on this particular National External Audit Report. Feedback from the Head of Environment with the remit for strategic services has been provided. I asked the committee to note the challenges associated with the delivery of affordable housing locally, and also to note that delivery of the existing programme will depend on the Scottish Government's recovery plan going forward into 2021, but also that of developers upon whom the council is reliant for project delivery. It also just suggests that you request a further report on housing services outlining the challenges involved in delivering social housing. If you agree you want to ask for that report to be submitted to a future meeting, I can request that with the aim of it being submitted to the committee in November this year, which as things stand just now should be possible for Phil Dawes.
Thank you, Linda. I can assure the committee that the next Audit and Scrutiny Committee in November is going to be a big one, but I think it's worth getting Phil back for this one. And I see Annette nodding her head, which is ideal. Barbara with her hand up.
Chairman, if I could just make a point here. I know we're going to deal with it again next time. Under the page 77 where it says implications of the proposals, I mean, the biggest implication is the cost of land that's in our area, and that's really a very, very big issue, because if developers have paid a fortune for land, they're not in a hurry to provide social housing or anything like affordable housing, because they need to recoup the money they've spent on buying the land. There's a very difficult subject, and the council itself is not well equipped to put up houses when they don't actually own any land. Anyway, I have got one proposal that I did make to Phil Dawes some while ago, and I believe he's been working on it. So perhaps, Linda, you could ask him to maybe be specific about that piece of ground up at Barhead Road that's opposite the car park. If you could ask him if he could maybe make some positive comment on that for our next report.
I can confirm that I've already spoken to Phil Dawes, so he will attend the meeting at which the next report is. There'll be a chance for you to ask questions, but I will alert him to the specific issue that you've raised.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, any further questions? No? Okay, thank you. And we go on to the last one. It's number 13, National External Audit Report, Privately Financed Infrastructure Investment. Margaret, you speak to this one, or?
It's me initially. Councillor Miller and Councillor Gren are again leading on this final report on the agenda on the privately financed infrastructure investment, the NPD and hub models. The feedback in this has been prepared and submitted by the Director of Environment for you to review. The report summarises the 5 key messages in the Audit Scotland report to set the context for the issues to be progressed locally. More specifically, it comments in Appendix A on 4 issues relevant to local authorities or both councils and the Scottish Government. You've been asked to consider the report, and as usual with all such feedback, if you want to take any further action on it, please just let me know.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else want to ask any questions or any points to raise? Nothing at all?
No.
Okay. That's the last then. Can I thank everybody for their attendance, and hopefully we'll see as many of you back at the one in November, and hope you have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.